So, welcome, Terry Boone. Welcome to the podcast. So, it's lovely to have you back again. So, last time we talked about your early history. I'd love to hear with your thoughts about what we teach in architectural technology, whether architectural technology should be taught as well as architecture, whether some students are better off going to architectural school, or some are better off going to learn architectural technology and then move into the industry and develop their design from that point of view.
Yes, I think it's crucial that you understand how the buildings fit together, which materials fit together, and how they fit together. And having a grand design is one thing, but unless you understand how, particularly some people seem to become involved in having a large number of materials. I've personally always agreed that the KISS principle, the old keep it simple, is important, and that not only should your design reflect the location and all its surroundings, but that it should work properly. It's the old Corbusier house is a machine for living in, which is pretty crude, but that's, it has to work. It has to be physically good, but it also can be beautiful. It can be the spaces and the way they link together and the proportions, and particularly windows. The shape and windows and how they work are the key, in my view, to successful design. And it's something that happens in a lot of the residential stuff with the mass building, that they don't get those proportions right. And I think it's obvious a lot of the time. They're getting better, but so for what it's worth, I think that's a crucial thing.
So should we teach that in the Diploma of Architectural Technology, or is that something that
I
a
believe it
graduate
should
would
be.
go?
I think it's so interlinked that you have to, having good details on their own is good, as well and good, but if you have particular designs, you have to adapt those details to them. So you have to be flexible and understand the principles, the fundamentals of keeping water out, and and proportions and so on. So I think they're obviously interlinked. It's hard to separate them, in my view.
My suggestion would be that because our diploma is only 2 years long, and my
Yes.
suggestion is that our diploma gives you the foundation, that is the detailing, the as much as we can, the foundation principles, how materials fit together, how construction works, keeping water out. But then it's the job of the employer to then teach some of those design aspects.
I think so. And there's nothing new about the fact that you really start to learn after you leave university with your qualification, and you get out into the workplace and get involved with the clients and the contractors and the bureaucrats, the local authorities and regulations and so on. That's when the real work begins. And if you've got that good foundation, which the university should give you, then you can adapt all these other issues which are fundamental. You can't build things without understanding the regulations, some of them which are onerous and some of them which are stupid. And even some of the authorities, it can depend on the quality of the people and the knowledge they have when they're checking drawings and so on. These days, there's so many people without the knowledge, and all I call them box tickers, because they have these pages of things, they tick boxes, but they don't actually understand what they're doing. I don't know whether you've come across that, but that's, I think, a serious problem.
Yeah, I don't think I've come across the problem myself, but I have seen. So in the old days when I worked for the Ministry of Works, our drawings and our details were well drawn, but they weren't full of technical information on the detail. So for example, the detail would say that was a flashing. The specification would give you a lot of information about the color, the powder coating, the material. That would be in the specs, and that way, if you needed to change something, you only had to go to the specification to make the changes.
Yes,
But the building consent officers are now looking for a lot more of that information beyond the drawing on the
exactly,
basis that builders don't read the specs.
exactly, and I think that's correct. So you do have to cover it pretty well on your detailing, yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that in a way that's very pragmatic because you're right. They're not going to be going, oh, I've got to go back to page 355 on the spec. But they also have to read the specs, which cover the quality and certain things. And some of the contractors are guilty of not following that. But I've always had a practice without having favouritism of having a stable of builders who are reliable. And because the construction industry is a very complex industry, the supply issues, the site issues, weather issues, and staff issues, and quality control, all these things. It's a massively complicated business, and it's just requires skill and knowledge and good management right through.
I'm curious that a lot of architects that I've worked with have always done a full service contracts, but a
Yes,
lot of the architectural designers only do construction documentation and
yes.
don't offer the full service. Is there in your opinion, one way better than the other?
Well, I've always believed that the full service is key. We've often had we've had people who just want to pay us to do a design, and sometimes we'll do that because anybody can pay you for the different stages of the design, the develop design, and the detailing and the construction documentation, etc. There are specific stages which often your fees are related to, and they can turn you off at any stage. But I've always discouraged or tried to avoid just doing, say, just a design, or even then doing the design and then a concept design where you outline the materials and without going into the detail. And I've always said, well, if you're not prepared to pay to get that information correct, it's not going to be the end result. Can't be so assured, I don't think. You're putting in the hands of a contractor now. So we've had a stable of contractors who are fantastic, and who, one of the key issues you probably know from practical experience is that a good contractor always has good control and communication with his subbies, because without the subbies, the plumbers, the electricians, the joiners, and the aluminium suppliers, and all the rest of it, unless they're all on target and meet your programs, the whole job becomes a nightmare, because the programs are set to if you're any good at it, where they've got certain procedures follow one after the other. There's a sequence in the construction industry, and if you get out of sequence on one of them, then the whole system gets stuffed up or delayed. So that working with people who have the ability to see ahead, to plan ahead, and to get on top of things, not wait until, oh, that's right, we should have ordered those aluminium windows, and you find there's a 2-month delay. So that's the kind of thing you find some contractors just have the management skills, which is essential, and some don't. Some bumble along.
So coming back to the full service or not full service, does not having the full service water down your concept?
I believe so. Well, it leaves it at risk of not being completed as it should be. That's my view of it. And obviously we'll do. It depends on your workload, but if you've got a good workload, which I've been fortunate to have most of my life, you don't have to take on stuff where they don't want your full service. Because I think it's you can see things as, like, even when you're doing observation, which used to be called supervision, it's observation now, is that you can actually see things that maybe you didn't quite catch in the drawing and do a little bit of tweaking and just make those improvements without extra cost. Just some simple things I find that if you're on the site, it's one thing to be looking at drawings, and obviously most of us can visualize the 3D of a building by drawings, but to get into the actual spaces, sometimes you can say, oh, maybe we could tweak that a little bit or tweak this. So that's why I'm very keen. If you want to get the best job you can, you do the full service.
The other thing, of course, Terry, the training your young staff when they come to you, that if you're not doing the full service, it's very difficult for you to fully train those
How can
staff
you train
members.
them? Exactly, because as we started off talking about this, it's essential that you go on a site. You understand what happens on the site, and because that's in the end, it's your grand vision that becomes a reality. That's the key to the thing. And unless you're there seeing your baby develop, it's just not the same. It's just not. You should be doing the work to enjoy it. And I've
Mm.
been fortunate to actually have loved every minute, even the agony. It's not all ecstasy, but I've enjoyed every minute of my 66 years I've been working now. I did my first job at the third year at university, which was 66 years ago.
That's
Scary.
a long time. You've done really well. The
To be still here, I've done well.
I mean, over that time, you must have noticed the difference between what we used to call a draftsman and what we now call an architectural technologist.
Yes, I think I suppose in some ways, some of the buildings are a little bit more complex in some ways. I'm not sure. There used to be a bit more standardization, I think, in the old days. I'm not sure, other than in commercial buildings, of course, were always different. And that's where the Ministry of Works was a great breeding ground for not only good design, because you had a couple of particularly good government architects. I forget one in particular, when they're doing power stations, and he encouraged them good designs for some of those beautiful power stations that were built, some of the control rooms and turbine rooms and things. So no reason why a industrial building can't be beautiful or
Mm.
can't be well designed.
I worked with the guy who did Huntley,
Oh yes,
and he talked about how much effort they went to
yes, I
with the
knew the boys.
design.
There were weren't there two brothers worked on that?
Ah,
Um,
the
what
guy I
was it?
knew was Bill,
Bill.
Bill Hill.
Bill Hill. Yeah, I knew Bill Hill.
He's from your way.
But I did. I was involved in a funny way, because they had 800 men working on that power station, and I was commissioned to design the cookhouse, or the tea rooms and to have to design It was a huge building when you had to feed 800
Mm.
workers. Because I'd done a lot of work in New Plymouth on the power station here, because Ministry of Works didn't have a branch in New Plymouth; they were in Wanganui, and I had a good reputation, and I was doing a lot of work for the ministry here.
Sorry,
Well,
back to the draftsman technologist guy, because I was thinking about when I worked in London, I used to sketch all my details and I'd hand them off to a draftsman who would then draw them in ink.
yeah,
And these days, I suspect that there's much more collaboration between architects and technologists.
I think so. Because apart from anything else, a lot of or not of it, all of it is on computer now, CAD, and a lot of the detailing is pretty standard. They just put in a number, and up comes the detail they want.
Mm.
And there's nothing wrong with that, I don't think, if it's appropriate. Yeah. So it's a different world. I mean, I'm not CAD literate. Obviously, I still do everything by hand. I sketch stuff up, and the boys put it together for me, and girls. Sorry, we've got nearly half our office is girls now.
So, well, our
Maybe,
courses are more women than men at the moment.
maybe, isn't
Um,
it? Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that the change, because when we interview students and we say that you won't be alone, you'll be mainly women, they're surprised. I was thinking about this, this more collaboration between the technologists and the drafts, and the architects. And part of it is that, as you say, part of it is that rise of the CAD and the BIM model now, where you have to be a lot more collaborative.
Yes.
But it also suggests that we have to make sure that we teach our students the principles of design, good design, how different materials have to come together,
Yes.
and also how to use the CAD program to document it.
Yes. I agree. And because nothing's changed there, that's why I say the human body hasn't changed. The proportions of buildings haven't changed in terms of relation to the human. And so I think that's key, that you don't lose that even with all this technology.
And the principles that we teach, the keeping the drainage and deflection,
Yep.
and the physics, and also the physics principles, the kinetic energy, pressure differential, all of that stuff is identical. It's just been the same for forever.
Yep.
So we should be teaching that so that you can then approach a new material and apply first principles to resolve the design.
Yep. Yes.
Well, this is a fantastic conversation. Thanks for joining us, Terry.
You're welcome.